Is Apple kind of sorry where they went with the Mac lineup? As of the MacBook Pro release last year, it feels like a lot in the media and a lot with the higher-uppers at Apple, they've been kind of apologizing. First with announcing that they were kind of sad that people didn't really like the Mac Pro when it came out because it's not upgradable, and people are pretty much just upset that Apple doesn't really upgrade the Mac Pro in any way. Very rarely do they put new components in it or change the ports on the back. It's from 2013, and they've given very little refreshes or upgrades to the Mac Pro lineup, as well as people not being overly impressed with the iMac lineup. It was cool when it came out to have a 5K display, but now Surface has the Surface Studio, which in many ways can kind of put an iMac to shame. And in other ways, the newest MacBook Pro can outperform a more expensive 5K iMac that doesn't have a battery, it's stationary, and yet a mobile laptop is able to outperform it in several departments like solid state storage. So it's apparent that Apple is kind of rethinking the Mac lineup itself, because they announced that they are working on a new modular designed Mac Pro that will be released next year. So it's still quite a while before we'll see it, but they are keeping it in mind and they're not ditching the Mac Pro users. Even though that's a very, very small percentage of the market. And with WWDC right around the corner, rumors are saying that they're working on doing some minor changes to the MacBook Pro lineup, given a lot of people were upset with it. I've really been loving mine, but I'm kind of the Apple sheep who conforms to anything they release. So when they say this is the way the future is, I kind of go, yes, master, I shall obey. And that's worked out for my life pretty well so far. I've been using the MacBook Pro ever since it came out. Really enjoy it. The touch bar, the keys, that plus size trackpad, USB-C only. I've been loving that, especially when I don't have to use the headphone jack and I can just automatically connect to my AirPods. More and more people though were upset with the price point, and I think a lot of that price is due to the fact that they were shoving in this touch bar with the fingerprint reader, which I find really helpful, but I can't deny it when I say, yeah, I bet a lot of people would be interested in buying a MacBook Pro that was $300 cheaper if it just had regular old function keys on top. That's what I think we're going to see at WWDC. Some Kaby Lake refreshes so that the components and the processors inside all the MacBook Pros are upgraded, and we might even see a reduction in price, which of course would make everyone a little bit happier. And what I personally think we'll see is function key MacBook Pros that don't skimp out on specifications, because right now there's only one model of function key MacBook Pro, and it only has two USB-C ports. They're only on one side for some reason. It would make so much more sense if they were on both. And there's only one fan on the inside. The processor isn't as good. The storage isn't as good. So Apple could make a lot of their consumer base happier if they just made a 15-inch MacBook Pro with function keys and regular old power button with 4 USB-C ports, and just overall made the MacBook Pro lineup starting cheaper. I really hope they don't eliminate the touch bar version though, because I still think there's a lot of potential with that. I don't think it's a gimmick, but I also don't think it's the future. The touch bar, I think, is the start of moving towards my MacBook Pro concept, with having a single piece of OLED touchscreen at the base of your MacBook Pro that is your keyboard, that is your extra size trackpad, that is an Apple Pencil reader, and you could have that whole touch panel with haptic feedback so that it gives the illusion, but you have a solid state keyboard there. And that touchscreen, of course, can change from app to app as you're using it on your MacBook. I think developers could do a lot more with that. I think they're limited by the touch bar, and Apple, of course, is not receiving the positive feedback they wanted to hear from that. The touch bar is not being used to its full potential. I wish we just had complete polar opposites, because I've said before, the MacBook Pro with touch bar is kind of this hybrid of what people want. On one side of the spectrum, we have people who want HDMI ports, SD card slots, USB ports, the standard kind. They want their laptop to just work with all their old stuff and just get a little bit faster. That's their perfect MacBook refresh. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, you have me and a couple other Apple sheep that are just like, we're okay if you remove all the ports on the iPhone. We will get used to that. We accept the future. We want nothing but USB-C. We don't even want a headphone jack on the MacBook Pro. We'd be okay if you remove the physical keys, did a whole touchscreen panel at the bottom. That's what we want. Apple sees this difference in opinions and tries to make something right in the middle, and today's MacBook Pro is what we get, making people on my side of the spectrum go, yeah, touch bar's cool, but I just wanted you to go further with it. And then you have people on the opposite end, the loyalists, who want the traditional MacBook, saying, oh my god, this is expensive. Oh my god, that's stupid. My MacBook doesn't have that. Why would I want that? I demand MagSafe. End result is no one is completely happy with it. Now, in case you're wondering, no, I'm not interested in buying the new MacBook Pros coming out at WWDC, because the changes we're about to see are very minor. They're not going to be physical. I guess they could be considered physical if it's just removing a touch bar and replacing them with function keys, but I reviewed that MacBook. You guys remember that, right? I unboxed it and played around with it, and I couldn't get it to work for me because I wanted something with a bit more speed, and I hated having two USB-C ports on one side and nothing on the other side. So I don't even think they're gonna highlight much of this in the keynote. It'll probably be in the first 5 minutes. They're gonna be like, we are overwhelmed with the positive feedback we're getting on the new MacBook Pro, and we decided we wanted to make it even more accessible, so we're making all these changes that people demanded on threat of death. And that's when everyone in the audience goes, well, okay, I guess we'll clap at that. I guess the MacBook's a little bit cheaper, so can't complain too much. Meanwhile, all the Microsoft fans in the back are like, doesn't have a touchscreen, so who cares? It has to have a touchscreen. Apple has a very wide variety of consumers, so you gotta understand it's very difficult for them to try to find the perfect product that satisfies everyone. I don't think there is a way. I think even if you do put on the function keys, people are still gonna be upset that there's no MagSafe and there's no SD card slot. And even if you remove $300 from the price, a lot of people are still gonna say it's too expensive. So some reports are saying there could even be a new MacBook Air at this keynote. I doubt that heavily, given I have always believed that the 12-inch MacBook was actually the follow-up to the MacBook Air, and someone very stupidly at Apple decided that they weren't gonna call it the MacBook Air, they were just gonna call it MacBook, because that rolls off the tongue easier. The MacBook Air is just around to be cheap. The reason it's so cheap is because it's old, and if they refreshed it, it would no longer be cheap. That's what I'm saying. They have refreshed it. It's called the 12-inch MacBook. And if there's other Mac fans out there wondering, yes, there are reports that Apple is releasing a newly designed iMac at the end of this year. Don't expect that at the iPhone keynote though. I would expect this around October, November. And it'll likely be a pretty basic upgrade, very minor physical changes. The most noticeable changes will likely be on the back. USB-C ports, 4 or 5, maybe 6 of them. And then they'll have more solid state. It'll cost a lot more. The only thing I would like to see is fewer bezels. My idea for a 2017 iMac would just be what the 27-inch Thunderbolt display used to look like, except they stuffed all the components in there. Because the 5K iMac is thinner than Apple's Thunderbolt display, so is it too much to ask that they actually just put a computer in that display, even though they discontinued it? Just take that same design with the same size bezel all right in the edges. And next year with the Mac Pro coming out, Apple is apparently going back into the monitor business. What the heck? Apple, I thought you exited it and said, no, LG, we're gonna partner with them to work with our MacBook Pros. Nope, now they're going back into it. Maybe they'll call it an Apple USB-C display to demo what USB-C is capable of. It'll be at 5K, it can charge your MacBook. But again, no current rumors for the Mac Mini. Sorry, Mac Mini fans. But I just want all you Mac fans out there who are upset with the current lineup, don't worry, Apple I think is doing a massive change in direction. They're noticing the feedback, they're noticing that Mac users are a very small percentage of their market, so they really could just cater to whatever they're asking, because all that really matters to Apple right now is iOS, the iPhone. They're focused on iPhones and iPads and Apple Watches because those sell far more than Macs, and the Mac user base is kind of just like extra on top. It's not a priority for them at all. And the iPod is certainly not a priority. Expect that to be discontinued any day now. Why do people keep asking me about that? Anyway, what are your thoughts on the Mac lineup? Is Apple apologizing for the way they've been treating their Mac users? I think they wanted to just give everyone what they're asking for and stop trying to tell us what they want, because it's such a small percentage of the market. Let me know all your thoughts in the comments below. This is your Apple Sheep here, and I will see you in the next one.